Good morning. Here are the top stories on this Monday, August 4th, 2025. The United States Senate has officially begun its summer recess, adjourning this past Saturday after a failure to reach a bipartisan agreement on a slate of presidential nominees. The adjournment effectively halts the confirmation process for approximately 160 of President Trump's appointments until lawmakers return in September. Senate Majority Leader John Thune of South Dakota had proposed a path forward that would have allowed for swift confirmations via recess appointments. However, that maneuver would have required the Senate to adjourn for at least 10 consecutive days, a move that needs consent from the minority party. Democrats withheld that consent, leading to a stalemate. Instead, the Senate agreed to a different kind of recess, one that includes pro forma sessions every 3 days. These brief, minutes-long sessions legally keep the Senate in business, thereby preventing the president from using his recess appointment powers to bypass the confirmation process. The impasse means dozens of key positions throughout the federal government will remain unfilled for at least another month. The next scheduled vote in the chamber is not until September 2nd, signaling a prolonged period of gridlock over the administration's personnel. That gridlock in the Senate over presidential appointments is just one facet of the political battles brewing in the Capitol. Another is taking shape in the House, where a former vice president is now the focus of a congressional investigation. Former Vice President Kamala Harris is finding herself back in the national spotlight, not only for a new book and a national listening tour that's fueling speculation about a 2028 presidential run, but also as a potential witness in a high-profile congressional probe. House Oversight Committee Chairman James Comer, a Republican from Kentucky, has threatened to subpoena Harris as part of his investigation into an alleged cover-up of former President Joe Biden's cognitive health during his time in office. Comer stated last week that the odds of Harris receiving a subpoena are very high, suggesting she would have more time to testify now that she has confirmed she will not be running for governor of California. Harris, for her part, has been publicly distancing herself from any immediate electoral plans, stating she wants to travel the country and listen to people without the transactional nature of asking for a vote. Legal experts suggest that while Harris would be a natural person of interest for the committee's probe, securing her testimony would be fraught with challenges. Jonathan Turley, a law professor at George Washington University, noted that while the committee can compel her to appear, the optics of forcing a former vice president under subpoena would be difficult for a potential future candidate. Furthermore, both Turley and former House Oversight Chair Trey Gowdy predict that any attempt to compel testimony would likely be met with claims of executive privilege, leading to a protracted legal battle that could last for years. Gowdy warned that Congress's subpoena power is limited, as it cannot dispatch law enforcement to bring in a witness, unlike the judicial branch. While that potential legal and political fight plays out in Washington, a different kind of political drama is unfolding in Texas, where Democratic lawmakers are taking drastic measures to block a Republican agenda. Dozens of Texas Democrats have fled the state in a dramatic move to deny the state's House of Representatives the quorum needed to conduct business. At least 51 Democratic members have left Texas to block a vote on a contentious redistricting plan backed by President Trump. The Republican-led proposal would redraw the state's congressional map in a way that is projected to give the GOP 5 new U.S. House seats in the 2026 midterm elections. Under Texas law, at least 100 members of the 150-seat House must be present for a legislative session. By leaving, the Democrats have effectively shut down the chamber. The current map gives Republicans 25 of the state's 38 seats. The new proposal would further solidify that power, in part by redrawing districts around traditionally Democratic cities like Dallas and Houston to favor Republican candidates. This is a high-stakes maneuver for the lawmakers, who could face penalties, including fines. Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton has even threatened to have them arrested for the civil violation upon their return. The Democratic National Committee has voiced its full support for the Texas Democrats, while the Republican Speaker of the Texas House, Dustin Burrows, has issued a warning that if a quorum is not present, all options will be on the table. As state and federal lawmakers grapple with domestic political lines, the Trump administration is holding a firm line on the international economic front. The U.S. Trade Representative has signaled that the administration's tariff policies are not up for renegotiation. In an interview that aired over the weekend, President Trump's trade representative, Jamieson Greer, stated that Americans should expect current tariff levels to remain in place. Greer said that the rates are pretty much set, pushing back on the idea that trading partners who have not yet secured deals with the U.S. could negotiate lower tariffs in the near future. His comments provide a clear signal to global markets and U.S. businesses that the administration's protectionist trade posture will continue. This stance has been a hallmark of the Trump presidency, utilizing tariffs as a tool to rebalance trade deficits and encourage domestic manufacturing. Greer explained that many of the tariff rates are fixed pursuant to deals, some of which have been announced and others that have not. For other countries, the tariff levels may depend on the trade deficit or surplus the U.S. has with them. The statement effectively serves as notice that the administration is not planning to pivot from its long-standing trade strategy, providing a degree of certainty, even if it is an unwelcome one for many international partners and importers. And while the administration solidifies its stance on trade, a long-standing piece of federal legislation concerning firearms is facing a new and significant legal challenge in federal court. Gun rights advocates have filed a second lawsuit challenging the constitutionality of the National Firearms Act of 1934, also known as the NFA. The lawsuit, filed in the Eastern District of Missouri, argues that a recent change in the law has rendered the NFA an illegal firearms registry. The NFA has for decades regulated items such as suppressors, short-barreled rifles, and short-barreled shotguns by imposing a $200 excise tax and requiring a comprehensive registration process for their transfer. However, the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, which was supported by President Trump, reduced that excise tax to $0 for many of these items. The plaintiffs in the new lawsuit contend that because the law no longer functions as a tax, its sole remaining purpose is to register firearms, which they argue is unconstitutional. According to the filing, the removal of the tax neutralizes the NFA's authority under the taxing power of Congress, making it an impermissible registry. The goal of the lawsuit is to have these specific firearms completely removed from regulation under the NFA. This action represents a growing legal strategy aimed at dismantling one of the oldest and most significant pieces of federal gun control legislation in the country.